Well, welcome everyone. This session is being recorded. I want to welcome you. I'm Brandon Bowtie Harvey, National Literacy Specialist with McGraw-Hill Education, and today this webinar is about using digital in the remote classroom, which, you know, this is unprecedented, and obviously we can't keep teaching our full literacy block like we would when we were in the classroom, so we're really going to be showing you how to access different tools, how to use the digital. I know we probably have all various levels of technology savviness. You may be very familiar with the print and the instructional plan of Wonders, but maybe you didn't use a lot of the digital. So we'll try to show you as much as possible. Please make sure that you utilize the chat box to ask your questions as we go through. We'll be trying to answer as many of those questions as possible. And also on the line with us today is DJ West, our National Professional Learning Director, who will be monitoring that chat box. All righty, and just one more time, I know a lot of you've already heard me say this, but I'll say it again. Just make sure you've joined the audio portion of our call today, either by dialing in with your phone number, using your cell phone or home phone, and then, or you can have the built-in computer audio. A lot of times it's nice if your internet's a little shaky that you dial in with your phone. That way you're not eating up too much of your broadband for the audio and the visual or screen portion of our presentation. All right. Now, I want to start off with some very important information. So write this down or take a screenshot of this with your phone. You can get a lot of information by dialing into the McGraw-Hill Digital Technical Support. We're finding them online. So you can go to this website, mhedu.force.com/DTS, right? That stands for Digital Technical Support. There's a lot of helpful articles. I know one of the things that we'll mention today and talk a little bit about today is Google Classroom, and there's all kinds of helpful documents on using ConnectEd, the Wonders platform, and Google Classroom. Or they are very friendly. I've heard a lot of teachers have very good success because sometimes it's not about the Wonders platform. It's more of a technical issue. It could be your machine. It could be the student's device, whether they're on a Chromebook or iPad, and making sure your settings and your browsers are all updated. So you can call 1-800-437-3715, and sometimes that will just help alleviate some of the digital questions that you might have. And I guess, DJ, is that number okay for parents to call if they're at home with their students and they're having some digital issues?
Yeah, that's a parent or teacher number or student number.
Great. So make sure you jot down that number. What I've done, everyone, and I work for McGraw-Hill, is I've put that number into my phone, and I've just saved it as a contact under Wonders Tech Support. But please share that phone number with parents as well. And yes, it is okay to tweet it out. So share broadly, and I think that'll be helpful for parents because you know what? Our parents now are like our co-teachers or our paraprofessionals that are there supporting our young learners, especially our kindergarten and first graders. Now, today's session is going to make some assumptions. We do assume that you have a teacher and student accounts. Even if you don't have student accounts, you know, there will be still things you can do with your teacher account, but really to use the full system that you have both teacher and student licenses. Now, how you access those might be very different because some of you might be going to the ConnectEd website and logging in with your own username and password, same thing for your students. But also we know that some of you may go to a district or school portal such as Clever or Schoology or ClassLink or even your own district's website that has a link that allows you to log in and launch Wonders, okay? So how you get there might be very different. This assumes that you've assigned content to students, or if you have one of those sort of portals, that content's probably already been handled. We call that a single sign-on, where there's just one click and the kids get into their digital accounts. We won't be able to cover everything, but once again, make sure you utilize the chat box, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So let me go ahead and reduce that PowerPoint, and let me go ahead and bring up some screens here. Okay, this is what I was talking about. You may log in at a screen like this. That is the ConnectEd login screen, and you put in a unique username and password, and that brings you to sort of your book bag, and you should see sort of your teacher edition and or student edition, right? And then that's how you would make sure that your kids have their content as well. I'm going to actually log in using a 4th grade teacher edition here. I also have a student edition. I've already logged in as a student. And again, your screen may look similar to this. And remember, even though I'm logged in as 4th grade, it looks and navigates the same, kindergarten all the way through 6th grade, okay? So here I'm going to go ahead and choose my 4th grade teacher edition. Let me just get in there one more time there. Okay. All right, and I do see some of you, like, you're using different portals, different ways to get in, okay? And make sure you send your questions to all panelists. If you send it just to me, I'm kind of navigating the presentation, and the panelists are myself, but also DJ West, who is going to be monitoring the chat box. So just that's a quick side note. When it says send to, make sure you choose all panelists in the drop-down box, okay? And he will also be helping you with any technical issues as best as possible throughout today's presentation. All right, so I want to go ahead and get started here. I'm logged in, like I said, as a 4th grade teacher, but this layout works the same, okay, no matter what grade level. So I want to start here by number 1 saying the planner. The calendar is what is sort of really connects the whole thing. Now, like it, some people don't like it, you know, the calendar, but let's talk about making sure, say, for example, my calendar is set up and I'm on Unit 4, Week 5. I can see that here, Day 2. And the reason why the calendar is so important is because that dictates what your students see. So if you notice here, I'm on Unit 4, and our weekly concept is achievements. And my essential questions, how do writers look at success in different ways? I can see my printables here that all are for that same Unit 4, Week 5. I've got my presentation that is specific for today's lesson plans. I also see this week's games, right? Here's all the games in this 4th grade unit and week. And so what I want to show you is that if I come over, notice the weekly concept is achievements. When I come over here from my student side, notice that it's tied to that same unit and week, achievements. And so if I click on the vocabulary here, those are the words to know for this particular unit and week. That's that connected vocabulary. The games are all there, right? Those same games that you saw on my screen are the games that the student sees. And then all of the different reads. So your leveled reader, your reading writing workshop pages for your shared reading and mini lessons, or if you're in 2020 version, your reading writing companion, the literature anthology selection, all of those connected pages are there. And so it saves you from having to assign all of those things. But you might be asking, my calendar's not set up correctly. So I'm going to just review that very quickly. So what I did is I went to Plan, and I selected Calendar. So under this section, I can go, I can plan at a calendar level, I can see standards, or my weekly plans. And so I'm in April. You can see that today is April 14th here, and I'm on Unit 4, Week 5. Remember, our concept was achievements. But let's say I wanted to move that down or move that up, a whole block. Now, again, right, you could go grab something from even earlier in the year, right? But I'm just going to take this, and you'll notice next to each day, there's a little drop-down menu, and you can move things around. So I'm going to move this lesson block, and you'll notice that you can replace day 1 with another somewhere where another day 1 lesson block is. And like I said, I'm just going to move it down a week so that Unit 4 is here on the 20th. So I select the 20th. Okay, so I'm going to be replacing or moving Unit 4 Week 5 where Unit 6 Week 5 is. And I say, okay. And so now you'll see that it is shifted down. And then when if I were to log out, log back in, and refresh the student screen, it would all be connected to where they would see Unit 6 Week 5, Finding My Place. Also, another thing you can do if things are slightly off just by a day or two, I'm just going to show you here. Let's say Unit 6 Week 5, I need that to start on Tuesday. I can add a non-teaching day, and again, you could give it a name, but I'm not. Notice it pushes everything down a day, right? So now day 1 is starting on Tuesday. Maybe Monday was a holiday. You can also see that then I've got this day 5 that's hanging on. So I could either extend it by a day if I need a little more time, or I could condense it by saying I want to teach a week of instruction in 4 days. So I condense that lesson block by getting rid of day 5, and then I say, okay. Now, if I wanted to, again, so you can see that's how you can adjust things, okay? Can you assign without using the calendar? Yes, absolutely you can. I just saw that question pop up. But it makes your life so much easier if your calendar is synced, because then you're not spending so much time. It's a little work on the front end, but it'll save you oodles of time on the back end because you're not constantly assigning every practice page, every textbook, every game, because the students will already see all of that connected activities with the unit and week that you're on, okay? All right, another little trick of the system, right? So it's easy to kind of push things down or whole blocks up, but if you feel like your whole calendar just needs to be like shifted backwards in time, let me show you something. So if you go all the way back, right, so I'm clicking here on my calendar to go all the way back to November, right, September, August, where school started. But I really need to move my whole calendar, up by like, let's say 7 or 8 days. Let's say 8 days. So you're going to count backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I got to go back here into July to the 30th. Now watch what happens. I add a non-teaching day. Okay, and you're like, Brandon, that didn't do anything. But here's a little trick of the system. When I remove this non-teaching day, it's going to pull everything up. So watch this. Now, there's my Start Smart unit starting on the 30th, and I pulled everything up. And so now, when I go into my, and again, the same thing could be said too. If you need to push everything down, you could go all the way back to the beginning of the year, and you could just add non-teaching days for a certain number of days. Okay, so let me go forward here into April, right? And now we see that it has pulled things up. I even have almost the end of my year starting right here. Okay, but I'm going to actually remove this non-teaching day. I'm going to push this back a little bit. Let me see what I want to do. I want to condense this. That's what we're going to do. All right? Because I want that Monday to be here. So I'm going to, now you saw me do this first, I'm going to move this whole lesson block back here to the 13th and say, okay. And that puts me right back to where I was, right? So now I've got achievements starting actually today. So that's just a little bit about the calendar. Now, the planner is,
Brandon,
yes.
so just a few questions on the calendar
Sure.
here.
Okay.
Okay. Here's one. When I adjusted my calendar, I had to condense some weeks, then expand them in order to move them around. Somehow when I moved the lesson block, it deleted all the items in the planner. I tried to read them, but it's arduous. Is there a way to correct that?
Well, so when you condense things, right, it's not disappearing. That's going to segue beautifully into over here in the planner. And so what happens is those sort of condensed days, if you remove a day, they all come here. And notice now I've selected weekly planner. So I see this button that says weekly holding bin. And so what happens is those days, like here you can see that day 5 that I got rid of, right, comes over here to my lesson holding bin. And everything is organized by units. So again, I was working in that unit 4, remember? Unit 4. And that day 5, week 5, day 5, which is where I'm at, all of that moved here. So I could actually select all of that unit 4, week 5, day 5, okay? And you could see all the different parts, right? If you have the ELD or the intervention, the whole group language arts, even the small group. I could select all of those things from that unit 4, week 5, day 5. I could choose all those things to put back, okay? And if I come down here, I'm going to move all of those selected items. And where do I want to? I want to put them back in their original location or a new location, or I could choose a date. So that's a way to sort of get things. Yeah, you can re-add to the planner. That is exactly right. Okay.
So Brandon, a couple other quick questions.
Sure.
What does a student see if you don't set the calendar up?
They'll right. So let's say your calendar is, they will see whatever your calendar is on. So if your calendar is like sitting at Unit 6, Week 6, right, the very end of the year, your students will just see whatever is part of Unit 6, Week 6, and it won't ever change. Whatever your calendar is showing is what the kids would see under those. Let me go back to the student view, under these icons. And that's okay, right, because the question also was, what if we don't set up the calendar? What if we just don't care about the calendar? And that's okay. You can assign the things you want them to see, want them to do. You just got to make sure you somehow communicate with your students, either create a little video or send a message out that says you need to always click on your to-do list, okay? You need to click on that to-do list. The students also, by clicking up here in the Resources tab, have access, just like you do on your teacher page, to all the text for the entire year, right? If I click on My eBooks, right, there's my workshop, their companions, their literature anthologies, right? They could get to all of those things. Same thing with all of the additional games, the leveled readers for their grade level. So again, it would be a little harder because they might be searching for things, but that's where, and again, to go back home, I'm going to click on the Wonders logo, that you, if you're not using the calendar, you're sending things, right, via the assignments, which is what we're going to sort of get into next, is how would I assign things. But before we leave that, I just want to remind you that now let's think practically. These are unprecedented times, folks. You might be used to doing a 90-minute, sometimes 120-minute, 2-hour literacy block. You're not probably doing that now. Our little ones, 30 minutes, maybe 30 minutes a day of instruction. Now, how you choose to do that is really up to, let's think about, first I would say, what does your district say? What does your school, your principal, what are they saying is important to cover? I'll give you an example. Some friends of mine that teach in a district in Minnesota said, you know what, we can't do it all. At kindergarten, their sole focus is making sure kids can decode, making sure they have learning all of those sound spellings and that they are decoding words in kindergarten. But at that same district, their third grade priority is comprehension, right? Making sure we're covering those comprehension skills, Some of that might mean going back and reviewing things they've already done, and making sure those kids can write a good paragraph. So really thinking about what are those priorities, because you can't do it all. I would also make sure that you have a plan, either district level or you can, if it's a little more site-based decisions, how are you going to communicate with your little ones? Is it by using Zoom? Zoom is a very kid-friendly application where you could have class meetings. I heard from a teacher yesterday that's doing Zoom, right, every day for about 30 minutes, and the priority, right, wasn't even about teaching mini lessons. I mean, she is teaching, but she goes, it was unbelievable how the kids just needed to have collaborative conversations, needed to talk. What are they doing? They needed to see their friends, and being able to really get that social and emotional part out. I think with our little ones who may not understand what's happening, it's so important that they see your face as a teacher. So having that sort of morning meeting time, then maybe doing a little modeling. And I'll say this, if you haven't been using digital, you can't just automatically start sending assignments and say, log on. Record your screen, make videos, make sure you're modeling how they would do these things, just like I'm modeling for you. All right, so the thing I want to let you know is, so thinking about, look at this day one, right? Here in 4th grade, we're going to build background, we're going to have a read aloud, vocabulary, and my shared read. All of those might be great things, but I can't do it all. So I might drag my shared read over to the next day. I might get rid of the read aloud, even though I do believe read alouds are very important. Maybe I just don't have time. So look what I can do. I can click on that cog. That cog or wheel is going to be your friend today, and you can move it to that holding bin that we talked about. And or another thing is you can simply drag and drop it, and it will remove it. And so now the only thing I'm focused on is vocabulary. You also have this planner options where you can turn the core pathway on. Notice my screen. Watch my screen again. I'm going to move this a little bit. Do you see how when I turn that off, you see everything, but if I turn it on, it kind of grays out what's not important, okay? And then, boom, it's gone away. I can hide those things. And that still might be a lot by using the lesson planner, or excuse me, planner options. And I could still say, you know what, the next day I'm just going to focus on that shared read, and like I said, we're just focused on really covering those skills. So I'm going to move to the holding bin, that skill lesson and that vocabulary strategy lesson, okay? Oops. I'm going to just move that to my holding bin. So again, you can really customize this to really shrink it down because Wonders has everything. It's a blessing and a curse, but now you've got to really make some instructional decisions. And those decisions really first always consider your district, what your district's asking of you, and then think about what are the priorities for your grade level. I want to pause there, DJ. Is there anything, questions maybe concerning the planner?
Yep, here's a couple. So what's the maximum amount of time you can put a unit in the planning block? Like somebody wanted to do one for 2 weeks, but the max they could do it was 6 days.
Yeah.
Can you adjust that?
Unfortunately, with the calendar, when you expand a block, right, if I were to come here and say I want to expand something, let me go there and just show you, it really only allows you to insert like 1 extra day. However, what I've seen people do, okay, is they expand it maybe 1 day, but then they add some, remember how we inserted non-teaching days? But what they do is they say, continue teaching the unit, for week 2, whatever it is. And what's great is you can still be teaching things. You can be going back, and using the resources. But what it does, it sort of holds your calendar so that if you need 3 extra days, you can insert 3 extra non-teaching days, okay? But then your kids, remember this kid side, they will still see the connected games, reads for that extended amount of time, because all of the stuff that's under the students' icons won't roll over or change until it changes. I'm going to hit cancel here, until it changes on your calendar, if that makes sense.
So it's just going to stay there until it hits a new assignment.
That's right, and that's why sort of
or a new day. Yeah.
Exactly. So even though that says non-teaching day, you are still teaching. That's why I said give yourself a little note. You can actually make a note when you add that non-teaching. Make your own notes here, and I'll just go ahead and say okay, and you can see it would say like extend, keep teaching, and so forth, something like that.
Okay, so here's another one. I rarely use the online resources. Are all of the items on the planner things that students can do online?
Not necessarily, because some of it is more teacher-facing, teacher mini lessons, but that's exactly where we're going. If I can go there, right? So, oh, and by the way, let me go back. Let me just go back. If for some reason you're like, oh my gosh, I deleted or I moved something around and I just want to get it back and start over again, not a problem. Look at my screen. Look over here to the far right next to the holding bin. It says reset. So if I hit reset, it's going to put everything back, right? This is everything that McGraw-Hill recommends, right? As if you were teaching in a normal classroom environment. Remember, the grayed out portion there is my lesson planner, right? So I could go ahead and hide those lessons. That shortens it up a little bit. And now at least I have sort of the core pathway, okay? Now, if I come back over here, right, you can see, according to my calendar, right, I'm on, Unit 4, Week 5, Day 2, and when I expand, this goes right along with that question, and remember how I said maybe I just want to focus on our comprehension skill. So if I click on this portion of my whole group lesson, looky there, now I can see all of the connected items, both sort of teacher-facing as well as student-facing. And to your question, if there's something that's sort of part of this mini lesson that's in my presentation, but I want to share it with my students, look what I could do. The cog, the wheel is my friend. So I could assign this little interactive mini lesson by clicking on the wheel and assigning it. Or maybe this graphic organizer. I could assign this graphic organizer. Now, again, when they get it, it's going to be in what we call the interactive version. If you were to open the original format, that is a PDF. Now, what can I do with the PDF? I could download it, then send it via Google Classroom, right? Or email it, that sort of thing. But that's why you always want to take a look at the cog or the wheel. So I may do this, on day 1, and then as I go through the week, I may assign some classroom resources like these practice materials, right, to share with my students. So when I click on that cog, click on that wheel, I could assign this practice page to my students. All right, I'm going to kind of stop there and see if I need to kind of have any questions.
So Brandon, I know you're probably going to show this at some point in time, but there have been a couple questions about tutorials and those kinds of things. Some of that's all in that professional development section right there, correct?
Absolutely, yes. That's where I was going to go at the end. Please know there is a ton of help, right? And I'll review. Remember, I gave you the technical support help, their professional development help, and in fact, you guys look at the top of my screen. Do you see the little person icon over here in the far right where it has my name and I log out? Right here. This will jump you right there. If you click on help from inside your dashboard, boom, just like DJ mentioned, professional development, and it even takes you right to the digital help. And this is huge, folks. If you, and there is no judgment here, right? We all know we're all in different places. Some of us have used the digital a lot. Some of us never use the digital. And we're on a steep learning curve here. Well, a way to flatten that learning curve is to use, that was kind of hokey, but is to use this digital help, because notice what it says over here: dashboard, planner, or plan, resources, assessment. All of these words, binder, are the same words of each part of the what am I trying, of the dashboard. So this really takes you through. And in fact, you'll even see there's a video on the student dashboard and the student, there's a PDF as well. And so again, these are great tools. And scroll down because there are 3 versions of this. And in fact, talking about technical support, when I scroll down, no matter where I am in my ConnectEd, look at the bottom here, technical support. Look at that. If I click on technical support, it takes me to that digital technical support website. And there are lots of support, you know, how do I use a Chromebook, accessing Wonders resources on an iPad, Google Classroom, how to view and complete Google. There's a lot of good things here to help you, technical, you know, Q&As. So again, we're providing the resources and the help so that you can help yourself. I also want to show you about this button. Look at this. It says minimum requirements. This is huge, folks. Please make sure that you share this with parents even, because if your browser isn't set up or isn't updated, look at this. You know, here I'm in Safari right now, and I need Safari 9 or better. Well, if I come up here and I check out Safari, I'm using version 12, so I'm good, right? But my students' side, I'm on Google Chrome, and it says I need version 69 or better. So if I come here and get about information about Google Chrome, well, I'm using version 81, so I'm good. My browsers are updated, so I know that I'm good. So again, just scroll to the bottom, technical support, minimum requirements, a lot of that can help you as well, even with screen resolutions and so forth. But again, this all covers all the different portions of help. Okay.
So Brandon, oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Nope.
I was going to go back to the planner for a minute. Can you define what the core pathway means?
Yeah, that's a great question. We'll always get asked. Basically, the core pathway, okay, which I have turned on right now, but let me turn that off. Okay. If I see everything, right, that's soup to nuts, top to bottom, everything for whole group, small group, language arts, whatnot. We really talk to our authors and our academic designers and said, you know, if time is short, which we know everybody has different amounts of time, what it does is it sort of says, here's the things that students aren't going to be necessarily assessed on in those weekly or unit level assessments, things that are not necessarily critical to this week's sort of focus standards or power standards. And so when I turn that on, you know, it's going to sort of, even down here in language arts, right, certain things are blocked out. That doesn't mean it's not core for you. So it's very sort of broad terms. You know, I could sit here and go, well, you know what? My 4th graders still need phonics support. So I want to show you something unique. Even though phonics here is grayed out, you can kind of create your own custom core pathway by clicking on what? What have I been saying all day, y'all? What's your friend? The cog, the wheel. And I can reactivate just that one block, that one little phonics mini lesson. Okay, so again, but yet fluency, even though that's a part of the core pathway, I don't need, I could do what? Move that to the holding bin. So you can, again, even kind of really custom.
Hey, Brandon, here's another one. I notice your options ask time, length of lesson in your planner.
Time.
The length of the lesson?
Oh, yes. That is for the EL. That would be if you have the extra additional Wonders for English learners.
Okay.
That's what that's for. So some people, especially a lot in, this is huge if you're in California because they have state mandated English language development time, and some do 30, 45, or 60, and that would just create a custom sort of pathway for the ELD, but only if you have the additional ELD resources. Anything else?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you a few different ones here. When you choose assign a resource, does it assign the interactive or the PDF?
It should be the interactive version. Yeah, when you're assigning it to the students to do, it's the interactive version.
Okay.
There always could be exceptions to that, but I'm pretty sure it's the interactive version.
Okay, so I'm going to throw some random ones out here to you for a minute, okay?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Should we assign the weekly test?
Oh my gosh, I talked to somebody on the phone yesterday about that. Well, number one, if they've never done online testing, I think you would first have to model that and really show them all like how to do it. I would worry about the validity of the test because you don't know if they're really being, I mean, of course, I believe the best in my students and that they would be honest and not ask for help or have help doing it. That's, I don't know.
It's tough.
That's a tough one. What do you think, DJ? I mean, do you have an opinion on it?
You know, it partly depends on your parent grouping in there, and it depends why you're assigning the assessment. Are you wanting to assign it as grade or C kind of performance on their part? And then you can have parents try to proctor it. I mean, again, if you're looking at it just from the grade perspective, it's dicey what you're getting. But if you have another reason to see performance, so it's helping you determine what you need to go back and support more, you could do that.
Yeah.
Brandon, the assignment part has come up multiple times, and I know you're going to show that, but you can assign anything at any time. It doesn't have to be from the unit you're in.
That's right.
So if we could take a minute and show them how to assign some things, that would be great.
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about the fact that when the calendar is linked, that really reduces the amount of things to assign because they're already going to have their games. They're already going to have those texts already there. But let's say you want to assign very specific things so that you make sure, like even though they have all those games, right, even if your calendar is connected, but you want to make sure they do a specific game or activity. So like I said, I'm really focused on, that day one, making sure I do that vocabulary lesson. Okay, so maybe I assign them the visual vocabulary, and then the next day I assign them the specific vocabulary practice game. Now, I want to let you know, do you notice that these games and all of the games in Wonders are just for fun? You're not going to get any feedback on them. You're not going to get any data. And these games are also what you saw, right? I can still see that same vocabulary game down here. But if you are in Wonders 2017 or Wonders 2020, you will also, I'm going to make my screen a little bigger so you can see it real good. Do you see this game right here, which is a blue triangle? That is a data collecting game. So you could assign that and make sure you say, play this carefully because it will be scored. The scoring of that game is connected to the data dashboard. So that's where you would get sort of a record of that. It wouldn't come through the assignment manager. It would come through, the scoring would come through the data dashboard. But let's say I do want to, I'm going to go back to that vocabulary lesson, and I do want to assign maybe a practice page, okay, for this vocabulary activity. So I click on the wheel, and again, see how every single item, whether it's a game, a video, a lesson, has this sort of wheel, and that's where you go to assign. When I am in the assignment manager, okay, here's the whole process of assigning something. I give it a name, right? So I'm going to say vocab practice for today. Do I want to review it? Probably so, right? And again, this might be how you're getting assessments done, right? It's just more, it's not an official test, but it's kind of if you needed to get those grades. Again, that's really a district decision if you're going to be assessing and testing like you would. These are just not normal circumstances, so I'm not sure if we would, because we're, the thing about the assessments too that made me think is the assessment's assessing as if you taught everything, and you may not even be covering everything that's going to be assessed. Now, granted, you can customize the assessments, but it's just hard to know, again. Okay, back to this. So I give it a name. I say I want to see it back. Student audio recorder. This is really where if I'm going to maybe assign like a text or maybe a leveled reader to read. I had some people trying to turn this on with like a fluency practice, and there were some issues you know, or kind of a black line and had it on, you could try it, but I think there's been some issues with audio. But I'll show you that with a leveled reader. Here is where you want to give directions. This is probably the most important part, especially if you teach young learners, is very specific directions, right? Like one, you know, launch the practice. And if you haven't ever done this before, you have to model, you would have to video and show kids either through a video or through screencast, something of what it would look like for them and where they would click and how they would use the tools, just like you would model a mini lesson. You know, use the tools to do digitally. Be sure to save it. That's always important. Save your work because it will connect it and send it back so I can review it, okay? So on and so forth. So be as specific. Here you can create a start date and due date. So if you want to plan early, you could go earlier in the calendar and do that, and then it won't appear, right? Is there a spelling test? No. Those are usually given orally, so there's not really a kind of a digital spelling test. I just saw that pop up. Due date, expiration date, and then I can, you know, click on my student or all or none. You can even, you know, have different levels, instructional levels. You can even create your own groups. Now, if you haven't done that, that's right here. I'm under the Manage and Assign portion, right here, Manage and Assign, right under Class Details. When you go look at your roster, it defaults to putting everybody on level, but you can select, you know, the different instructional levels for students, and you can even create groups, right? Like I may create a group called the Texans, because I live in Texas, and then I can select, you know, certain students to be a part of, you know, the Texans, and then when I go there, right, when I go back to my assignment manager, oh, let me, you know what? I just lost my assignment, I think. Let me go back and grab that assignment. You get to see this one more time. I'm going to my vocabulary, and I'm going to assign that vocabulary practice page. Sorry about that. Okay, but now you notice that I have my different groups here, okay? And that just makes it really easy because then I can click and it chooses just those students, right? Or I could say just the Texans, right? So it's just a great way, or everyone, that I could assign that. So again, remember, we're going to call this vocab practice for today. I do want to see it back. And most important, just putting in some blanks here, is you give very specific directions: start date, due date, expiration date, and then hit assign. Okay, boom, done. And then, okay, so that's been assigned. I'm going to come over to the student side. I'm just going to refresh my screen. Notice that right now it says 10 assignments. Hopefully that should bump to 11 when I refresh my screen because I just sent them something. Okay, and so now you can see, kind of looks like I have text messages, right? Well, these are my to-dos. Now you're going to see a lot of assignments here because I've been using this account for all of my webinars, but here's the one thing I sent you. Okay, so this is what the student sees. This is where you would really want to model and maybe do this with them through a Zoom meeting, or you know, by logging in and using one of the students' accounts to kind of model this. So I come over here, right, launch, click on the thing. You know, FYI, somebody was asking about interactive version. You know you're in the interactive version when you see these gray bands on the side. Kind of looks like I'm in my launched presentation. And also you have all of these interactive tools across the bottom. Notice when I go through, I've got highlighters, a pencil tool, square, line, circle. That's really important if I'm in kindergarten or first grade. A lot of the practice pages have them, you know, circling things, drawing a box. But here I'm going to be typing in words. So I can choose my font, right? I can choose the size of my font. Probably need to reduce that a little bit so everything fits here. You know, I can, then it says basically, and of course I would want to make sure they read the directions carefully. I happened to grab my camera that was dangling off the doorknob, and so I can come here and choose my, make sure choose a good font size to fit in this blank. This is where it gets a little, well, I'm having a little trouble, but dangling. It's okay if it's not directly on it. It's not a perfect science, right? I spied a hummingbird that was, you know, hovering above, and so I can click here. Let me try 12 points. Hovering. You know, it's not directly on the line. I don't know why. It's usually a little bit better than that. But once I do that work, right, and even if I, you know, square something, or maybe, you know, I can say, okay, I used that word already. I can mark that out. Or, you know, highlighting something. What did I say was so important is save. Down here where the little disc and pencil is saved. Now watch my screen. When I hit save, it says here, it's saved to your assignments, saved to my work, and your binder, okay? So when I close that, notice because I hit save, it has attached my work. I can also message my teacher. I can message here. If maybe I wanted them to write me something or answer some questions on something, I can answer questions, notes, whatever I want to do to my teacher, and my teacher will see that, and then it creates a feedback loop so that my teacher then sees my notes, can answer me, and respond back. But then I hit submit, okay? Now, while I'm over here, let's say I assigned you know, more than one thing. You can assign more than one thing in an assignment. Remember, if I click on this game, right, I can play this game as a student, okay? But am I going to get any feedback as a teacher? No. And in fact, you know, it'll put that green check mark as if, oh, they did it, and all they have to really do is open it. So it's sort of like Scouts Honor, like we know and hope they, you know, I wouldn't tell my students that, but again, making sure they play that. Same thing here. If you assign a leveled reader, ebook, text, okay, when I open that, they have annotations. But again, if you're in Wonders 2014 or 2017, there's no way for me as a teacher to see those annotations. Now, if you're in a close reading companion, those of you that had 2017, you do see annotations. You would see a little person icon here when you open this up as a teacher, and you could go and look at individual students' work. Or if you're in 2020 and you have a reading writing companion, you'd have an additional icon here that's called a student review, okay? But otherwise, everybody does have these. Do you see the bottom of my screen here? See this little next to the make connections? We call this the notebook or the binder. These things you can see. So questions you want them to answer about the text, which could be a very informal assessment. I make a note here to be read by my teacher. So you would see this. And when I hit submit, it's going to go into my binder that I have access to. And we'll talk about the binder. Same thing here. I'm going through this beautiful 4th grade text called Spiders by Nick Bishop. But remember, at the end of each main selection, right, there is a writing prompt. If we read about it, we write about it. And so these, again, would show up in my binder if I do that work. Unfortunately, as of right now with the versions, circling, the notes, the pencil pad, that cannot be seen on the teacher's side, right? But
it is saved on the student side.
It's saved on the student side, so the student would always see their notes and their markings. That's a good point.
Couple quick questions about assignments. Can you assign more than one activity at a time?
Yeah, which let me just do that since I just showed that. So let's just say, let's go to the next day. And again, remember what I'm doing here is starting at the lesson level. So let's say I want to assign this little mini lesson. So I'm going to hit assign this resource. But I also want to add something to this mini lesson. So that's where you come over here to edit. Okay, and then you sort of need to know the name of the thing or a keyword. You can also select by category. So maybe I want to put a leveled reader, you know, with this mini lesson. Okay, and hopefully I know if I knew the name of the leveled reader, I could type that in. You know, like if I typed in garden and then hit search, right? So anything that has the word garden, I wanted this story right here. Click add, and now I've added that resource. And in fact, you can add several resources to that one assignment. I'm going to hit done, and now you can see here. So I would say, please view mini lesson, and then please read the text, the leveled reader, and maybe even answer the questions and submit. Something like that. And again, choose the student, right? Hit assign. And once I've assigned that to the students, then they will see both portions of that. Okay.
So Brandon, if a student starts an assignment and they don't finish it and they don't submit it, can they go back later and work on it and then submit it?
They could, yes. But remember to always make sure they save that work, okay? And let me just go back. Even though it's attached, if that makes sense, let me just assign this really quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back over to the student side. So for example, that vocabulary practice, right? I know, let's say that it's attached. If I come over here to the right, that's launching it brand new. But if I come over here, there's my work, and then I could continue to keep working here, if that makes sense. And so, my work is saved, and then I would just hit save again. Okay, save to your assignment, save to your binder, boom, and then hit submit. Okay, if that makes sense. Other questions?
Yeah, so can you show how to assign something into Google Classroom?
Great, yeah, let's go there. So again, certain things, depending on where you view them, may just say assign this resource, or if I come to this game or like this data, remember what's special about this, those of you in 2017 or 2020, what's special about the blue triangle? It is a data collecting game, right? I could assign that, but I also notice if I come over here to the resource library, okay? Now, this is a great place to live as well, because I can see these are all of those interactive tools that are in my presentation, right, that I would be showing. But again, I may not use all of these. And notice it's Unit 4, Week 5, Day 2. I click here, Day 3, that's going to reload. These are my Day 3 resources. Here's my Day 1, resources. But if I want to assign something through Google Classroom, you'll notice here, like this video, it will say share with Google Classroom. When I click share with Google Classroom, it takes me to my Google site, and I choose my classroom. It's creating an assignment. Hit go. And then any additional instructions I can do here, and there's that link. And then, of course, the points and who's it for, whatnot, and then I hit assign. Okay, and now my kids will see it. Now, here's the thing to remember, okay? I'm not a Google Classroom expert, but I do know this. Your students still have to be logged in and launch their Wonders account, okay? So, for example, if I then am a student, right, I need to get to this screen, right? I need to make sure I've launched my book. Then I would choose another tab, right, and I would go to Google, okay, Google Classroom. I would go to my Google Classroom, and then I would see my assignment. So I have to log in first before I can get to it. Because
and part of the reason, just for the audience to understand, part of the reason is all of the intellectual properties behind the password. So if you put the link in and they click on it, it's going to ask them to log in.
Right.
If they're already logged in, it takes them right to it. So the easiest thing is just log into ConnectEd. And then the second thing is then click open your Google Classroom, and then everything will work. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Because and the way you'll know if they're not, because when they click that link, if they were just to go to Google, click on the assignment, it would take them to
the login page.
The login page,
yeah.
Right? And so students may not know how to log in because they're used to going through Clever or Schoology or ClassLink or some, district portal, and they won't know, that there's some username and password. So again, even if you use Simplified Login, have the students go do that first, however they get into it, and then, open up a tab or a different browser and go into your Google Classroom. All right, and then again, here's what's interesting too. From this view, right, I'm on Unit 4, Week 5. What if I needed to go back and review? I also
so Brandon, real quick, real quick. How do they know which version they're on? Is there a way to tell it from the screen?
Not necessarily from the screen. I mean, if you're in 2017, you will see this, Close Reading Companion, okay? If you don't see this, but you see Reading Writing Workshop and Literature Anthology, that is probably 2014. If you see the Lit Anthology and you see a different tool that's called the Reading Writing Companion, that's 2020. But you can also simply click on one of your books, right? So here I'm opening up the Reading Writing Workshop. And when I click just a couple pages in, right, to my title page, or copyright page rather, you see right here, I can highlight it. I'm going to use my highlighting tool. Maybe it'll work here on this. Yeah, see that? Make it nice and big. I know it's probably small on your screen. But there's where I know I'm in version 2017. So this will say 2014 or 2017.
So, Brandon, a couple other questions real quick, and we got to kind of wrap up.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to ask you this. So if I set the level of my student as approaching level or beyond level, when they see, and I set my planner up, they automatically see the version set to their level, correct?
No, like if you have never touched this, if you've got your roster here, the default is to put everybody as on level.
Right.
So you would need to manually go in.
That's what I meant. If I set, though, my student as an approaching level, I'll get the approaching level material, correct?
The one thing it does differently, really, the only thing is it gives them that level of leveled reader. So student A will get the orange approaching leveled reader. The AA student gets the blue, and student B would get the green leveled reader. So that's really what that does. And remember, it's flexible. So as students, that's why we call it flexible grouping. As students grow or change or have different needs, you could come in here, not that you probably would do it weekly, but in a real learning environment, as you assess and 6 weeks, 9 weeks, you can go in and sort of change them, and that would change the leveled reader that they get delivered to their account. That's what that does.
So if I want to assign the same lesson to all students but have it differentiate for different groups, do I have to do that 4 different times for my 4 groups?
You would. So, yeah, that's a great example. So, like, for example, I'm just going to this is a little hidden gem right here. So I'm on Unit 4, Week 5, Day 1. And when I click behind here, look at this. There's those interactive games, and here's those differentiated pages, right? This is something unique for 2014 and 2017, right? You don't have this all divided out in 2020, but A for approaching. So I would make this assignment, right, and send it to those students. Then I would have to come back. I would choose the your turn, which is the on level, assign that to a group. The B is for my beyond level, assign that to that group of kids, and then E. So that's truly how you would differentiate. Yeah.
Okay, a couple other quick questions.
Yeah.
And because I don't know the answer to some of these, and you may not either. Can they assign into Seesaw?
Good question. No, we don't have that availability, but I do know a lot of teachers are using, they're going to the student side here, right? And the students sort of use the Seesaw to screen capture and share things that they're doing on their screen with Seesaw, but not like directly share in. Now, here's the deal though. Just like probably with other platforms like Class Dojo or Seesaw, if it's a PDF, if something lives in a PDF that you could download, right, which all of the practice pages, you know, have a PDF version. If I come here to student practice sheets, if I open, what did I say, original format, this is a PDF. And so if it's a PDF, I can save that, I could download that, save that to that desktop, and then anything that's on your desktop, you could probably share through Seesaw.
Okay, a couple other questions. If I'm a ELL teacher or a special ed teacher, can that classroom be shared to me so I can share assignments out as well?
Great question. So again, under Manage and Assign, Class Details, right here under Class Details. So like the core homeroom teacher would need to share that. And what they can do is, you know, the special ed teacher or resource EL teacher has to have a ConnectEd account. And then the core teacher can say, are you sharing lesson plans and allowing them to modify lesson plans, or are you just allowing them to interact with students? So you could check both or one or the other. And when does that sharing need to end? You can even have that end, but that's where you would go. So under Manage and Assign, Class Details, Share.
And then two other questions real quick. One was, how do I find my students' usernames and passwords?
Right, so under Manage and Assign, Class Details, right here, there is sort of the profile, and then this creates like a temporary password. So I can see my username here. Now, this student already has a password, but if I needed to sort of go back in, I use the temporary password to at least get in, and then it will force me to create a new password. And that's
part of the reason that is, everybody, is just because of privacy laws. And that we can't show their existing password, but if you need to change it, that will give them a temporary one and allow you to change the password.
And even here, print temporary passwords, you could do, I think, a whole class. Yep. You know, if I download that, let me just open that up. I just downloaded it. And this is kind of good because it's just like all on one sheet. But remember, these passwords here are all temporary.
Temporary.
Yeah.
So another question was, we're doing review right now through the end of the year. Is there a way to do my calendar for next year already?
No, I wouldn't. I mean,
well, they went in and it would only let them go to July.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So basically what you could do is under Manage and Assign Class Details, you would create class, and you would sort of be starting, you know, so I may say Brandon's Harvey's class for what's next year is going to be 2020/21 school year.
Yep.
Hit next, and then this is so important in the setup. It defaults to whatever today is. That's, you know, April 14th is not when the next school year starts. So you'd sort of have to know your calendar already. When is school starting? So I'd have to go forward in time. Let's say school in Texas usually starts at the end of August, right? There's my first day. And then do you want to start over with an all-new planner, or do you want to start with an existing planner? So basically all the customizations and moving things around like you did, you could apply this year's customizations to next year's calendar. Now, if you are unsure about that, just start with the McGraw-Hill suggested planner and you can customize as you go. And then you hit next. Again, you'd have to sort of, this is really great to make it as clean as possible. Like, hey, I know we're off for the whole week of Thanksgiving, or we have a winter break that's, you know, 2 weeks long. And so you can see what I'm doing is I'm adding all those additional, even maybe district level days, like, for example, maybe we have in-service on January 4th. All of those kinds of things, or spring break, you know, is at the end of May. I can do all that, hit save, and it has literally created, right, here I am, it's sitting at Unit 0, which is Start Smart. It's sitting and waiting for that August 2020 date to arrive. Now, notice now I have a drop down, so I can go between this year's, calendar and next year's. So it is possible, but be careful, because if you have integration and single sign-on, you don't need to do that, because what's going to happen is the class rostering for next year, all of that is an automatic reboot for you sometime probably in July.
And when you first log in to ConnectEd, you should be able to tell if you're an integration user or not. And if you have any questions about it, contact your IT department. They will be able to tell you.
I was going to say, make sure you consult who's ever sort of in charge of Wonders Digital in your district, whether that's a curriculum supervisor, an IT tech person, and just say, should I be doing this, or is this going to happen automatically for us? Or at the very least, call our 1-800-437-3715, and they could probably tell you if you have the integration services from us. Other questions? I don't mind. I know we're a little over time. I don't mind staying on for 5 or 6 more minutes just to run through some questions quickly.
Jessalyn, can you assign a password that's easier for the students instead of setting up temporary passwords? I've tried setting it up, but for second grade, temporary passwords are complicated for them. That's where you want to do that simplified login, isn't it?
Yep. So that's where you would want
to manage it, assign, right?
Yes, but I don't see here.
It's actually when I create the class that I have to do that.
Right here under edit
there.
the class. Yes, use simplified login. So when I do that, what it does is it creates a teacher-specific URL, right? And so this is what you would want to share with parents and students, this web address, and save it, and that's how they would get into that. And again, if your students are logging in through Clever or Schoology or ClassLink, you don't need to really mess with that, because that's probably being set up at your district level. And if you're unsure, ask somebody in your district or call our tech support. Okay, other questions?
I want to start on April 20th, Unit 6, Week 1, Day 1. How can I reset my calendar so I can pick up my lessons on April 20th for those?
Yeah, so that's what we covered right there at the beginning. That is a very specific question, but that's where you're going to sort of. What did she say? She wanted
Unit 6. Let me go back up here. Unit 6, Week 1, Day 1 on April 20th.
Yeah, so you'd have to sort of Unit 6. I need to, mine's all out of whack, but find that unit, and then you would move that lesson block, and then hopefully things aren't super out of order like mine is, just because I've been demoing this, but you would sort of move that lesson block, and you can kind of take your chunks and pull them down to get in the right order by, again, clicking here and then move lesson block. And then even if you're not able to get it, like if I hit move lesson block here, and then I want it to be on like April 20th, see, that's not available, but then I can come here, get it as close as possible, and then sort of use that insert non-teaching day to scoot it over like 4 days. That's probably what I would do. But you may need to go back and watch the recording of this to get some more additional support. I would also recommend, folks, again, the professional development, okay, and the digital help right here, and then go under planning, and there's some information on the calendar. There's a video showing how to customize the calendar, including moving lesson blocks, adding and removing days, and then there's even a printable for calendar.
Hey, and Brandon, here's one. Students that have iPads or tablets can't access the 2017 activities on Flash. How much Flash is there in 2017?
There's very little. Almost all the Flash has been removed from Wonders. The only things I know that might possibly be Flash would be the Writer's Workspace and the WonderWorks Adaptive Learning, but everything else Flash has been removed. So, but you can also go, I believe you can go into some settings, and it may say allow Flash, but I'm
Not
pretty.
on an iPad though.
Oh, not on iPad, but I'm
No.
almost 100% positive that was one of the big things that we were doing back in 2017 was removing all Flash. I'll have to go and test that out on my own iPad, but I'm almost 100% positive. Like all the games, everything was moved over. In fact, I just had a conversation yesterday about the ebooks and when they moved everything out of Flash. So
yeah, so this was one. If students log in through Clever, can they also have a password to log in manually? No, they need to go through Clever.
Go through Clever, yeah.
Great. Got a lot of thank yous.
Yeah, has this been helpful? Please let us know. We want feedback. If this met the needs of your expectations. I know we can't answer everything. You know, I know I wanted to go into the binder really quickly. Remember how certain work was in the binder and I wanted to see my students' work? I can click on binder, choose that demo student. And again, I like to just see all, you know, and then see, look, there's some of the things that I did where I could see the answers to the questions from their literature anthology or reading writing workshop book. I could see the work that they saved on their worksheets as well. So the binder's a helpful place too. But again, use the professional development, use the digital help. I'll once again remind you of our digital technical support email and 1-800 number. They're also very helpful, you guys. DJ, if they want to join this again, I believe we're doing some more Wonders sessions.
There's 2 next week, and then there are 2 next week. We may also look at adding a session that we're just going to call office hours.
Okay.
Where we can just do some Q&A.
Q&A. I love that.
Things that you're wondering about. The sessions coming up next week are the same sessions. It's just they're going to be a little bit different because the questions that are being asked.
Sure.
So you can check that out. On iPads, students do have to check the uncheck block pop-ups. And then also somebody did mention if your students are using the app and you're using Simplified Login, they do need to use their real password the first time they go in to sign that up.
Yeah. And, you know, once again, I would say down here, remember when we went to technical support and minimum requirements? One of the things under minimum requirements, I do believe it talks about tablets and mobile devices.
Yeah, it does.
You know, enabling Flash, even though we have worked very hard to remove all Flash, browser cookies, JavaScript, MP3s, and definitely allow, because some of the games, some of the ebooks do pop up in or open in a pop-up window, an additional window. Talks about screen resolution. So there's a lot of helpful things here that really aren't even about the website. It's about making sure your device, your software is all set to maximize the experience.
Is it possible to see if students have logged in? Unfortunately, it's not.
No, we don't
need to check this one, Brandon. Wendy said the fluency word automaticity activities are still in Flash, so let's check that one.
Okay.
Okay. Great, guys. Hey, thanks so much for this, and then we will actually send out the recording. And then some of the setups with your districts, you have to contact your tech people to see if it's integrated, not integrated, the service we offer, but not all districts do it. So, hey, Brandon, thanks so much for this.
You're welcome.
The recording out to you. And then if you have questions, I'll also send a couple links out to the remote learning site. We do have a video there for parents for K1 and 2. We have one there for grades 3 through 5. And then also there's a Spanish version of that if you need it. So we'll send those links out and use those resources to help.
And we're doing this for all, you know, check out our website because we're having sessions for K to 12, all subjects. So if you use My Math or Inspire Science or Networks, any of the McGraw-Hill family of curriculum, there are going to be some sessions like this, and there's already a ton of great things online as well. I believe it's, let's see if I go to, what is it?
Education.com.
Yeah, mheducation.com. And there is, look right here, you know, learn more.
Learn more.
And then look, pre-K through 12 support. And those of you that are still hanging on, I love this. At-home learning for all. free
So
stuff.
before you click there, though,
Yeah.
Brandon, right above it, the two big ones are that remote learning for schools. That's for you as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And the one below it is for, so all these things, program resources, product trainings. And then the at the top of that is the support for at-home learning. That's for your parents.
Yes, and that at-home learning, y'all, this is where you're going to see a lot of free resources that are downloadable, shareable for parents, even just for fun stuff. But even from right here, that remote learning for schools, if I go to the product training, is that going to be sessions like this plus even more things?
Well, it's an introductory training on Wonders on how to use all the things that we've talked about.
Oh, great.
It's not aimed at remote learning.
Okay.
But you're going to notice there, regardless of which version you're in, we have a recorded training on there for you.
Perfect, perfect. And you scroll through, and again, it's got all subject areas. So this is a great place to go. mheducation.com will help you out. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for moderating the conversation. It was great to hear you this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys. Really helpful. Thanks for all the questions. And again, some of these, don't forget that tech support number that Brandon put up, and then he also left his email address, so we expect you to fill up his inbox.
Only if it's most important. Yeah, there's that digital support number. They're very helpful at the 1-800 number.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.